all you're really looking for on filing one of these cases, all you're really trying to do is get some cause of action in front of a jury. From my perspective, I don't even care what the cause of action is. As long as we get up and do our story, and the jury gets to decide who's lying and who's not, and who's going to win and who's not. That's the whole thing. So if you can develop enough evidence to get over a summary judgment, you know, you're going to get to tell your story. So maybe.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think I know the case that you're talking about. We discussed it before. With the family.
Okay, wait a minute. This private conversations are sealed privately. That's not a question.
Well, I have a question. If we're on the internet a lot and we run into people and meet people that have, you know, they tell you stories like really bad stories. What do we do with these people? I mean, like just like 5 days ago, somebody came to me and said they took my kids out of school. They strip searched them for 2 hours. What do I do as a helper? And what lawyers and what, you know?
First thing that I can tell you is that you can't give them legal advice. In California, if you're not a licensed attorney, it's a crime to be out giving legal advice. It just can't be done. And you're running a risk if you do it. Not only that, but if you give them the wrong advice or bad advice, and then they go follow your advice, there could be liability there for you. So you don't want to give anybody legal advice when they're approaching you on the groups or anything like that. What I think is okay to do is there are a lot of groups and resources available on Facebook and on the internet where there's people you know, that are posting their work, that are sort of like support groups, emotional support groups.
So you don't recommend referring these people to lawyers?
I think it's okay. It's great if you know the lawyer that can handle the work, that, you know, is decent.
But there's no lawyers out there that are saying, hey, I'm, you know, over here if you run into anything?
You know, actually that brings up a good point, and this is probably a good segue to talk.
Because I will sit there and give them lawyer advice if you guys aren't gonna.
There are lawyers here today that came up, and this is probably a good segue in talking to them a little bit specifically. You probably have figured out that there's not a lot of lawyers, not a lot of attorneys that do this kind of work, and that there are a lot of people that need help for the situations that they're in, not just in juvenile dependency court, but pursuing their rights, their civil rights. And it's important work. It's work that should be done. This is how our rights, our liberties, our essential liberties are preserved. As people go out and they fight the government. And maybe, you know, in modern days, we don't do it with muskets and armies. And we've traded in our armor and our weapons for pens and suits. But we still serve the same purpose. And we've been working for a long time to try to encourage and help other lawyers get into this kind of work. And we are happy, number one, that you're here. Thank you for coming. And number two, to share our work or to share your work. If you have something that, you know, can help us, or we have something that can help you, we're happy. We will come to you with open arms and do whatever we can to help not only drag you into this maelstrom, but to help you get through it. And one thing that I hear a lot from attorneys who we talk to try to get to take these cases is that I run a business, I have expenses, I have to make money. I would love to do the work, but the harsh reality is an economic one. I'm in business to make money. And what I can tell you about this type of business is you're probably not going to get uber wealthy on it. These are tough cases. They're complex and they're expensive to litigate. But you can make a good living. These are federal 1983 cases. Under 42 U.S.C. Section 1988, you're entitled to your reasonable attorney's fees. Reasonable attorney's fees are not your contract rate. Say you did something for $35 an hour. I've done a case before for $35 an hour because that's all they could afford. And they got behind on their bill and didn't pay it anyway.
Anyone else like that?
But the point is, at the end of the day, when you prove these two elements, the judge is going to give you a reasonable market rate based on the work that you're doing. On the last one we did, we got $1,000 an hour. So you can make a living at this. It can be done. There's economic risk for sure, and they're tough for sure. But you can make money at it. And not only that, but this is really important work you're talking about. These are your essential liberties. This is the kind of stuff. This is how freedom was won. It's people going out and standing up and fighting and making sacrifices and taking risks. And we are no different today than those guys were 250 years ago.
Yeah.
And we have the same obligation. And I hope you guys jump in and do this.
To change the subject. Yeah, I know. A khaki entry. Is the last bad act the discovery of the khaki entry?
No. No, discovery is not what's going to drive your 1983 cases. Actually, let's talk about khaki specifically. That's actually, I think, not correct. When it's going to come from is notice of the fact that you're on khaki. Prior to the Humphreys case, I don't think many of the counties were actually giving notice to the parents that they were on the list.
And this would be that case.
Right. And what's going to trigger your due process right is the notice of the fact that you're on the list. So once they give you notice, then you have a certain amount of time within which to demand your hearing and go through that process. If they haven't given you notice yet, then your statute's not running.
They only have 5 days after index. 5 business days.
Well, I don't know the specifics of that.
First, I just, thank you very much for your time and for the food.
The food was good.
Some of them, like, just, with the hours to come here
Sure.
in Los Angeles.
I appreciate
My
that.
question is that, if a child, like you said, it's a statute limitation, like maybe 2 months when came home, by the time it came home, could be. If, what that child, where that child, first of all, how you can prove that, I mean, we already know that the court-appointed attorney who represents the parents, it's malpractice, because they're not, no discovery.
Okay, let's not get into that. Let's
And the
focus on the
court-appointed
question.
attorney who represents the child, so by the time, so if a child decided to file a lawsuit, what happens to the court-appointed to represent